All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video coming out of rookie minicamp. And check out Pig and a Pickle. 2 locations. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And they're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right. One of the common questions I've been getting over the last couple of days is, Krug, did you see a sleeper? Was there a sleeper at 49er rookie minicamp? And, everybody knows everybody at this point. I don't know that anybody's truly a sleeper. But I do have one. Of course, you know that I'm going to have one. And I do have one. And he's a little guy, but man, he's got big game. The Niners did tryouts this week. Now, they have guys that they drafted. They have a whole crew of 11 or 12 players that they signed as undrafted players. And then they just had, 10 or 12 players who showed up in camp on a tryout. And so those guys are even a level beneath the undrafted free agents. And it's pretty rare that anybody on a tryout necessarily, makes any kind of an impact on your football team. It's rare for them to even necessarily get invited to training camp. It's not unheard of. Everybody's going to invite a couple of tryout guys probably to camp to fill roster spots, but it's rare. It's rare. And it's really rare that you get a good player as a tryout at rookie minicamp. But I'll tell you, there was this one little receiver that was in Niner minicamp named Jaycour Pearson, who is really an interesting guy. This guy started off playing for the Western Kentucky. First of all, he's a Fort Lauderdale, Florida kid. He played for Devin Bush in high school. He played for a powerhouse high school program that, produces a lot of pro players. He was heavily recruited, wound up at Western Kentucky, 4-year player at Western Kentucky. They played him in the slot. He was an all-conference player for the Hilltoppers. Then he transferred for his 5th year to Ole Miss and played his final year in the SEC at Ole Miss. And for at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, of course, is their head coach. He's their offensive guru. He didn't, even though this kid was a slot player and an all-conference player at Western Kentucky, Lane really didn't use him that much in the slot. They used him outside as a boundary receiver. And he's small. I mean, we're talking about 5'7", not very big at all. But the run after the catch ability is really impressive, and the versatility. He can play running back. He can play wide receiver. He can play slot. He can play all different units on special teams. He's a punt returner. He can be a kick returner. As far as where is he best in the slot, he's great on corner routes. When you line him up outside, he's really good on these slant routes. He runs them with conviction. He's got great hands, not afraid. Then this kid went and played in the XFL. So he didn't play, basically played at Ole Miss. And then last year wound up, playing in the XFL. He didn't just play in the XFL. He was the XFL Offensive Player of the Year for the Seattle Sea Dragons. He was the best player in the XFL, one of the best offensive players in the entire league. And, so you're talking about a guy who, had a lot of production. He was a reliable target for the Sea Dragons. And he played on a team where Ben DiNucci was the quarterback. Josh Gordon was the other receiver. So Jaycour Pearson has no NFL experience. So none at all. But he did have a tryout last year with the New York Giants. But, man, he was great this year for the Seattle Sea Dragons. He led the Sea Dragons in receptions and yardage. And he was just very, very reliable. He 75 plus yards in like 5 or 6 straight games. And he's trying to get an invite to camp. He stood out to me. Now, when he was, one of the coaches that he worked with, he's one thing that's real clear is that this guy can flat out run. I mean, and he got deep in minicamp once or twice. His head coach in the XFL is Jim Haslett. Haslett, of course, is coached in the NFL. Haslett had been telling people that he thought Pearson was going to run right around 4.28 in the 40. So, I mean, that would have been faster than Tyreek Hill coming out. At his pro day, he didn't run a 4.28. He ran a 4.42. And if you watch him out there, he doesn't look necessarily like a 4.28 burner. He looks like more like, as I said, like like a low 4.4 guy. But he's still plenty fast, and he's very, very productive. Now, he is small, and if you look at the 49ers, they're loaded at receiver, so it may not be with them. But I'll tell you, this kid made plays at Ole Miss. Go watch his film from Western Kentucky. He was an all-conference player there. He's got experience. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's what you're looking for as a backup. Why? Because he's got experience in the slot. He's got experience, as a boundary receiver. He's got experience outside. He's got experience in special teams. You could play him at running back. He's versatile. Whether he's 4.28 or 4.42, he's plenty fast. And he got deep down the sideline in the minicamp and showed those afterburners. So, the speed's the name of the game in the NFL. You're always looking for speed. And the Niners are loaded at wide receiver. They don't need another receiver. They really don't. But Jaycour Pearson from Ole Miss is your deep sleeper who could wind up in their camp this summer. And if you see him, if you see him this summer, you're saying, what? Nobody thought Jaycour Pearson was any good. You can dig up this video that I did on YouTube on Jaycour Pearson and say Krug had it. Krug was all over it. No, I'm just joking. But I do like this player. He's small, but he's fast and he's productive. So, and there's a number of interesting routes, and there's great versatility here. And there's big time run after the catch ability. And so you could do worse. Let's just say this. If you go to camp and you've got Jaycour Pearson on your roster, people are going to be like, oh, look, who's that little guy? But by the end of the preseason, they might be saying, hey, that little guy's got to make the team, man. That guy can flat out play. So remember the name, Jaycour Pearson, wide receiver from Ole Miss, star of the XFL with the Seattle Sea Dragons. Can the Sea Dragon make it to the NFL? All right, we'll find out this summer. But he looked good in minicamp. He absolutely did. All right, hope you enjoyed our 49er video. Check out Pig in a Pickle. 2 locations. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. If you're like me and you live out in the East Bay, check them out in Emeryville. They're inside the Emeryville Public Marketplace. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.